Supervive is an upcoming isometric battle royale game from a new team at Theorycraft Games, made up of developers from a laundry list of AAA competitive games with tons of experience. By combining the MOBA-like perspective of games like League of Legends and Dota with the 40-player battle royale concept, throwing in some stylish neon colors and a cast of well-designed hero characters, Supervive is aimed squarely at competitive gamers who are familiar with games like Overwatch, Apex, and of course, other MOBAs. I went hands-on with Supervive during a recent playtest, and I'm here to tell you how all these ideas come together, how it plays, and whether or not Supervive has the potential to attract and retain players through fun and engaging gameplay. So in this playtest, by the way, Supervive is planned for free-to-play open beta release later in 2024. There was duos and squads, so you can play with one random person or friend, or a full squad of 4. There was no trios, at least in this test, which I found interesting. I played Apex for years. I really like trios personally much more than squads, but this is different as it is, isometric perspective, a MOBA, so on and so forth. The roles are a little bit different when compared to an FPS. And before I go any further, let me remind you that the team at Theorycraft, they've worked on a ton of competitive games, and this game, Supervive, is supposed to be in that same space. Overwatch, Apex, Halo, Destiny, Valorant. Their list of experience goes on and on and on. So this team got together knowing exactly what they wanted to make, and with all the pieces of those projects that they've worked on coming together. So once you queue up for a match, it's pretty obvious. If you played a MOBA or a Battle Royale, in general, it's pretty obvious what you're supposed to do with a few caveats. You got the isometric perspective. You've got a good cast of heroes. I believe there were 14. I know they added 2 more towards the end of this playtest. But the first thing that I really like about Supervive, the characters are cool and unique. They're well designed. They look good, but their abilities, it's obvious that this team, they know what they're doing when it comes to designing these heroes and giving them kits that complement your abilities, complement themselves. You've got tank characters, support characters, different DPS roles, of course, close range, range characters like a sniper, so on and so forth, mid-range. But all these characters are very well designed. Their abilities, again, they make sense. There was a character, that traditional rogue-like character who had throwing knives, who could do like a somersault or backflip and a teleport to a dagger. These kits are very well put together, and there wasn't a single character that I was like, ooh, what does this guy do, or what does this girl do? Everything made sense, and the characters, once you kind of put the pieces together to understand, okay, this is my rotation in combat or whatever, they feel good and they make sense. They're intuitive, and I like that the devs, they kind of reuse the same control scheme for all the characters. So, a certain button in every single character that I played was your movement ability, So even if you're playing a hero you've never played before, that left shift, no matter what your movement ability is always your movement ability. And I like that. It makes learning new characters and playing other characters a little simpler and more intuitive. Your basic objective is to drop it on the map just like any other Battle Royale game. There is a squad leader that chooses your drop on the map, and everybody's just, kind of teleported to that spot through an animation very quickly. And it's just like any other Battle Royale game with a few exceptions. There's a circle, obviously your team has to run from the circle, play within its zone. That's normal. There's 40 players on the map, but kind of like a MOBA jungler, there's a lot of PvE enemies in this game, and you're supposed to go around the map and kill these PvE enemies to level up your character, acquire new gear. Of course, you'll run into other players and other squads along the way. There's a lot of really interesting movement stuff on the map. There's gaps that you can use a glide ability to get over. There's a train on the map, which was really cool. You can actually get run over and killed by it, as well as ride on it. There's some vaults that you can open, kind of some objectives, that take a little bit of time and are a little risky, but you get higher tier items out of them. All that stuff was really cool. I think what's going to be interesting to see is how do competitive players really react to that stuff, because personally, me, for the most part, I come from a more FPS background. I did play Dota for a long time. Pretty hardcore for about a year at least. I don't have a lot of interest in doing a lot of that PvE stuff. When I play a PvE game, I just want to play a PvE game. In a lot of instances, the blending of the two doesn't really appeal to me. When I'm fighting PvE enemies, I just want to go fight PvP enemies. It does great for some obvious third-party situations. There were numerous times in this test where I saw like 3 squads fighting. Then you got the PvE enemies in there as well. That's really cool to see. Some players might get frustrated by having these monsters or whatever run around in those big fights. But you're in control of where you aim your abilities. You know, it is an isometric game, but you do aim your abilities, so it's not like they get in the way if you're shooting them. That's kind of your own fault, so to speak. But the first criticism, if you can call it that, of Supervive that I have is that there's nothing wrong with the combat, right? Everything works very well. I didn't run into any bugs. Again, I thought the characters were very well designed, both visually and gameplay and ability-wise. But I kind of felt that the combat kind of really lacked impact, if that makes sense. And I play mostly FPSs these days, right? Like, I play Dead Drop, of course, is the game that I'm very dedicated to. I have a whole channel, Midnight Mare, if you want to check it out there. I play Overwatch, you know, I played Apex Legends for a long time. I played PUBG, a ton of first-person shooters, Valorant, Counter-Strike, where the gunplay is very important. And obviously this is different. It's an isometric game, but I don't know if it's maybe the audio design just needs to be like, you know, like emboldened, or maybe some more spell effects or something, audio cues. It's easy to understand what's going on in the fights, which is great. You know, you don't want too much noise, so to speak, like both visual and audio. But something about the combat of the game, the fights, didn't seem super exciting. And while I do feel the game can be, like, it's obvious it can get very sweaty. Like, there were some squads going that were just decimating people and combining their abilities very well. And, you know, it was great to see a lot of support players really playing the role of support. Which doesn't happen in a lot of first-person shooters that I play, to be honest with you. And, you know, I think that's the thing about this game is I think it's going to appeal more to the actual MOBA players than first-person shooter players. And that'll be interesting to see how people react, because, you know, there was Battle Royale, right? There was a game that tried this before. Battle was a MOBA. Then they made Battle Royale, which was a Battle Royale version of that game, of that MOBA, essentially. And it wasn't bad, but both games kind of ended up, unfortunately, not making it, so to speak, despite both of them being pretty good games. Battle was also not like a true MOBA, I guess you could say. It was kind of more of an isometric arena game or whatever. You know, there's many people in the comments that point that out, I'm sure. But anyway, coming from the first-person background and a hero shooter background and all that stuff, again, I just didn't feel the combat was as satisfying as you might find in like an FPS battle royale. I didn't feel like running from the circle and, you know, those final circle situations were as tense as like a first-person shooter, right? But that's not to say that there's a ton of depth here. And again, I do feel like this could be very competitive. I could already see like a viewer experience for this game, and you know, commentators calling out how squads are moving across the map and so on and so forth. And I do want to talk about the map itself very quickly. It was, again, very large. I think in general there is a fair amount of downtime in this game where you're killing those PvE enemies and so on, which a lot of BRs have that mid-game, right? That's kind of slower. That's always an element of the game, is trying to, you know, map size compared to player count, so on and so forth. The map itself, I felt, was pretty well designed. A lot of really cool movement mechanics, like I mentioned. Flying around the map was fun, and there's these big gaps, like I said, that you can glide over, which are a big part of the gameplay if you watch. And if you get shot while you're moving over those gaps, you do fall to your death, which is when you actually pull it off and you kill somebody else. It's this risk-reward system where kind of when you fly over a gap, you're like, oh boy, and you're kind of flying into the darkness, so to speak. You don't know what's awaiting you on the other side, but when you catch somebody doing it and you shoot them, and you send them falling to their death out of the air, that's very satisfying. It's risky, and it isn't the end, because your squad can revive you. There are finishers in this game, but there's also like the kind of the Fortnite style reboot vans or Apex respawn points. So you're never out, and I saw a lot of teams respawning their teammates, which is definitely good, because it's not as punishing when you die. Of course, you leave your squad without you, but it's not the end of the world. They could flee, get to a respawn point, and bring you back. And there was a really small quality of life feature that I did like in this. When you're fighting a squad and there's like a big team fight, and, you know, things get crazy, especially from the isometric view, there's an audio cue that tells you you've eliminated half of that squad, like if it's a 4-player squad. So it's kind of letting you know there's only 2 guys left in this squad, so you might kind of want to go try to keep pushing them off, or just gives you a point, kind of a reminder to evaluate the situation and help you decide what you want to do from there. And I thought that was great. So all in all, I do feel that Supervive is well designed. I feel that it's got, competitive DNA flowing all throughout it, every aspect of the game. It performed great, looks great, feels good. Like all the right pieces are there. I feel like it just needs a little bit more, right? That again, that combat and that intensity, that impact of being, hitting a spell or being hit with a certain weapon. I think they're going to be able to design heroes and characters for this game for a very long time in the future. And I guess that's one of the questions I have is, what's next for Supervive in the long run? Do they do multiple maps, like most battle royales do? Because this map, well, it looks really cool and it's got a cool color palette. There weren't a lot of different biomes that were iconic. There were no spots on the map in kind of like a first person or a third person shooter battle royale. There wasn't these really interesting drop locations, right? And that's one of the problems that a lot of isometric games have in general when compared to a first person shooter or something like that. Where's its Twisted Towers gonna be? Where's its Skull Town gonna be? If you're familiar with those games, those from the first person genre. As far as map design goes, again, nothing egregiously wrong, just nothing that really stood out or seemed iconic. And I do wonder if they could shake things up with this map by just adding different biomes other than the ones that they have right now on the maps, which again, nothing wrong with. I just think it needs some more variety, so to speak. Or do they have other maps, kind of in the works with those other biomes? Is that where they take this game, as they just keep adding other maps that look different, feel different, play different? It'll be interesting. Like I said, I think it's going to appeal a lot more to MOBA fans than first-person VR fans. But I do think that they got something. They got something here, and it's worth keeping an eye on. So that's it for this video, guys. Thanks for watching. If you want coverage of more games like this, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Come check out my other channel, Midnight Mare, which is dedicated to Dead Drop and Midnight Society. We are working on our second live-action short film in that universe, so come check us out over there. Make sure you check out my most recent video on the channel and come back for the next one. If you played Supervive, let me know what you thought about it down in the comments. We'll see you in the next video. Reynolds out.